And welcome to the third installment of the Interlaced webinar series that is all around focusing on strategies to help scale your startup. I'm Mallory Randall, and with me today, I have our lead technical systems engineer, Erlan Calilung, who will be showing us about and talking to us today about scaling your security through the development of an information security program, also known as an InfoSec program. But before we get started, and for any of you, if this is your first time joining with us, I just have a few housekeeping items that I want to go over. We welcome and encourage you to ask as many questions as possible. So if you have one as we go, please feel free to pop that into the question and answer field, and I'll make sure that we cover those at the end of the presentation. This session is being recorded, and both the recording and the slide deck will be made available to you, and we'll make sure to get that emailed out either later today or the latest first thing tomorrow. And if you enjoy this webinar, please make sure to register for our fourth and final installment of this webinar series, which is going to be Wednesday, December 4th, where we will be covering strategies to scale through automation and how to do that authentically. So when we send out the slide deck and the presentation, the recording of the presentation, we'll make sure to include the registration link to that webinar. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Erlan Calilung. Go ahead, Erlan.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mallory. Hi, everyone. Well, I'm really excited to be here with you all today to touch the importance of scaling your security. So as Mallory mentioned, my name is Erlan Calilung, and I serve as the lead technical systems engineer here at Interlaced. And I've had the pleasure of working here at Interlaced for the past 2 years, supporting hundreds of clients, which has informed the topics that we'll be touching on during today's webinar. So as she mentioned, please feel free to drop any questions that you might have into the chat, and then Mallory and team will be monitoring those throughout the presentation, and we'll aim to address them towards the end of the presentation. So I don't anticipate us to be able to take the full hour that we've allocated today, so I hope to be able to return some time back in the event that we move through the presentation fairly quickly and follow up questions quickly as well too. So with that, we can go ahead and dive in. So scaling your security. So first and foremost, what we want to be able to do is we want to talk about the agenda. So as to the agenda, I'll share about a little bit about Interlaced, who we are, who we serve, and at which point we'll launch into the core topic at hand, which is scaling your security and how to obtain this implementing information security program, also known as InfoSec. So throughout the presentation, of course, we'll be talking about what is information security, aka InfoSec? Why does my company need an information security program? What's an asset inventory, and why should I care? How to handle risk assessment, right? And then also how to be able to implement an InfoSec program and keep your team safe via ongoing training. So first, of course, we'll dive into who we are. So a little bit about Interlaced in itself. To simply put it, we're a startup IT experts that specialize in developing an IT program and technical stack that enables our clients and partners to grow with ease. So Interlaced was founded just over 15 years ago as a small startup ourselves, and we've grown to a point in which we're currently serving hundreds of organizations across the United States, with our home base being in San Diego and Nashville. So the content that we're going over to be chatting today is a direct result of the insight that we've been able to garner through the support that we've provided to 1,000+ organizations over the years. So I hope this information will be helpful to you all, regardless of the current stage in your business. And so now you know a little bit about Interlaced. Let's go ahead and dive into the main topic, which is scaling your security with an information security program. So next slide, please. And then in the next coming slides, we'll be talking about information security, how to implement this program, and we'll be talking about the what, the why, and the how. So let's go ahead and talk about what is information security first and foremost, right? So information security, also known as InfoSec, is the practice of protecting information systems from unauthorized access, use, disclosure, disruption, and modification or destruction of information. So to put it in simple terms, using a combination of process and different tools, such as data encryption and user authorization, your organization can keep your sensitive data both secure at rest and in transit. So an information security program encompasses the culture, the policies, procedures and standards, and guidelines that outline how your team manages and secures its information's assets. So the way that you define all of the above will dictate how secure your information assets are from outside threats. So the best defense for any cyber attack is with your people first and foremost. So there are many tools that can help you with detecting and monitoring, but defining all of these different things at the beginning, along with the guidelines your team, will outweigh what a tool can be able to do for your organization. So preventing and being proactive will ultimately be the best line of defense to ensure your information assets are protected. So it's all about securing your information assets, right? So building an information security program ensures data confidentiality, integrity, and its availability. So safeguarding against unauthorized access, tampering, and disruptions of our business is what we're trying to do here in an information program, right? So now that we've talked about what an information security is, let's talk about the why. So why does my company need it, right? So that's actually a good question. And when we think about why my company needs it, we want to start with the why. And starting with the why is always important, right? So asking yourselves questions on why you need an InfoSec program will ultimately guide you to creating your InfoSec program. So here are some questions that you can be able to ask yourself, right? So first question is, are customers or venture capital partners asking for it, right? So this is a great question to ask, especially when your company needs to adhere to certain regulations or policies like HIPAA, SOC 2 compliance, and many other regulations and policies to ensure your business stays funded or compliant, for instance. And some companies need this in order to ensure their grants or funding are approved or protected. And some companies may need this in order to ensure that they stay on top of the leading edge of the market by protecting trade secrets. So all companies are vulnerable to cyber attacks and ultimately can stop your business operations. So asking this question is of, are customers or venture capital partners asking for it, right? So another question that we can be able to ask is, are you looking to be able to grow in a quick manner? Or is it because you want to grow your startup, right? So when a company is growing, that means there's a lot more risk involved to be able to protect your business, to ensure you're staying on top of the leading edge of your market. So the more you grow as a business, as good as that can be, it can also go ahead and grow your vulnerability for your cybersecurity risks. So with more people involved in your business, the more potential there is for risk, right? So another question that you can be able to ask is, why do you want to build an InfoSec program, right? So there's a few things that we can be able to do. And assets are important to be able to keep your business afloat, right? So protecting them is one of the most important tasks as a business owner, to ensure that you're staying on top of your market, or making sure your business retains their business, right? And so it's important for us to be able to know like what an asset is, and we'll be kind of going over like information assets to be able to know what we want to be able to protect. But those are the most important parts of your business, because it keeps you in your business. It's also what your business is all about. And so that's why to be able to protect your assets is going to be the most important part of an InfoSec program. So another question is, are you hearing buzzwords? So maybe you might have heard a colleague actually getting like a cyber attack, or maybe you're hearing these buzzwords on like the news or on the internet where people are actually getting attacked. And that's the reason why you want to actually build an InfoSec program. that's perfectly fine because there are so many cyber attacks happening throughout the world as of right now. And so it's good that you're being mindful of those types of things. So it's a good question to be able to ask yourself, right? And the maybe one of the last questions that you can be able to ask is, do you want to be able to protect what you build? So any business owner, of course, wants to protect what they've worked so hard to be able to build. So an InfoSec program would be a great start to ensuring what you built is protected, which would then actually retain your business and further grow your business exponentially. So those are a lot of different questions that you can be able to ask. And it's only after you know why that you can be able to move to how to actually build an InfoSec program. So that's how it's, and the how is going to be different for every single business, but you can tell like one thing is remains the same, the why. Like everyone has a why of why they want to be able to build an information security program. So that's why starting with the why is one of the biggest and best things that you can be able to do for your business. So many startups miss this step and jump right into buying products based on buzzwords or because they can be they need it, and they end up with what equates to be an extraordinarily expensive set of locks and keys and alarms that are securing little to nothing. So let's ensure that we're asking ourselves these questions, and starting with the why is always important and is the basis of implementing your information security. But the next important topic to cover is what needs to be protected, which is your information assets. So we'll be going over how to be able to figure out what is an information asset and why should we care. So how do you know what to be able to secure? You find out. That's the biggest thing, is you go and find out. And an asset inventory is a great place to start. So let's go ahead and look at some of the different things in terms of an asset inventory. So first and foremost, it's not just a list of computers or deprecating purchases. And an asset inventory isn't a list of computers and deprecating purchases. It's according to like ISO 27001, a widely used secure standard set and agreed to internationally that everyone uses. An asset is defined as a valuable location within an organization's system where information of value is stored, processed, or accessible. So this could be like a customer relationship management system, a cloud storage, your website that actually hosts a lot of your different products, or even an intranet site that an employee uses on a daily basis. So we need to think about this in a more wider scope in terms of your information assets. And this could include like your computers, and that would not be the only area to be able to assess. But like we really wanted to look at like cloud storage. Are we using a SaaS application to store sensitive information? It can also be your email or maybe even like a QuickBooks application storing all of your financial information. So we want to continue through that, and in the importance of knowing what is an asset in your organization will ultimately allow you to know what you need to be able to protect, right? So it's not where the information lives, it's about how your assets interact with all aspects of your business. So knowing this information will allow you to know how to be able to protect your information assets and prioritize what needs to be able to be protected, right? So all of these locations are considered to be an asset and vital to ensure your business stays running, and are needed to be assessed when thinking about what assets your company actually has. So now that we're thinking about the what, let's actually dive into assessing risk of such information. So we want to be able to know, how do we actually handle risk, right? So assessing risk involved in with all of information assets will help you define what is important and what to prioritize, giving you a roadmap to be able to create your InfoSec program. So let's ask ourselves these questions, right? What we're going to do is, if I don't reduce this risk now, here's what it'll cost me later, or what will it cost me later, right? So if I don't reduce this risk of my financial information, let's say, being leaked, what it will cost me down the road later. We could get a ransom situation happening, right? We could lose bid on new prospect. We can also make sure that our finances don't fall into the wrong hands with assessing those types of things. So if I don't reduce the risk of maybe, let's just say, health information being leaked, then this could cost me a client due to a HIPAA compliance violation. We can also be able to get fines as well too, which ultimately hurt our business. Or let's just say that my trade secret's not protected, right? What could risk our upper hand in like our market as of right now, or lose what our business is separating us from our competition? So it's a good question to ask of like, if I don't reduce the risk now, what will it cost me down the road later on? So another question that we can be able to have is it more expensive to reduce the risk facing the asset than it's worth, right? So is it worth more to be able to, or to reduce the risk, or is the asset worth more, right? Because you don't want to be able to protect something that's really not going to be worth it in the end. So if like you implement this robust, extraordinary system that may cost me an arm and leg, is it actually protecting a portion of my business that is creating revenue to ensure my business stays afloat? We wouldn't want to be able to invest in a section of our business that ultimately does not create opportunities for revenue and growth. So asking yourself these questions allows you to be able to know what to prioritize and what needs to be done first, and if it needs to be actually done. So some risks are acceptable, some are avoidable. Some you need to make sure you are investing enough in now to be able to avoid a bigger business impact in the future. So ultimately, simplifying what risks are acceptable, avoidable, and what needs to be invested in now could allow you to be able to avoid like the biggest impact in the future. So I like to reiterate that because this helps you be able to know what to be able to prioritize in terms of your InfoSec program. And it allows you to be able to know how you're going to be able to handle risk management. So assessing the risk involved on the information assets you have identified will provide you this roadmap to be able to create the InfoSec program. So now that we've defined this, we've defined the what we're trying to protect and the why we're actually trying to protect it. Let's actually dive into the how, because I know that that's what you guys are here for, and we want to be able to talk about how we're supposed to be able to take care of everything, right? So how do you be able to implement a InfoSec program? So implementing an InfoSec program, it can be a daunting task in all honesty, guys. It's a lot to be able to think about. And the best way to be able to implement is to just start, essentially. It's not needed to be able to have all of the answers in the beginning. This program will always be able to will always be evolving as risk is assessed and managed, and as cyber attacks kind of change, because IT is always ever changing, your business is always ever changing, and even cyber attacks are always ever changing. So here are some steps to be able to implement an InfoSec program. So first and foremost, we want to establish an InfoSec team, right? So here, this is where you want to be able to formulate a dedicated team comprising of executive leadership and operational staff to be able to oversee this InfoSec strategy and implementation. So these are all of the stakeholders that you guys have in your type of business. This could also be like a director that oversees a specific part of the business, because they're the people that understand what is an asset in the company and what is the risk involved if these assets are not protected. So that's the reason why you want to be able to have a few different people that actually fully understand the business, because they can be able to understand what we're trying to protect and what is the risk involved to be able to protect it. So next and foremost, once you establish that InfoSec team, is we want to talk about inventory and manage assets. So here is where you want to go find out what information assets you have, how it interacts with all of your different systems, and you want to be able to conduct a comprehensive inventory of assets. It doesn't need to be as robust at the beginning. Like, you're gonna be able to be able to uncover more things as you actually do this inventory. And so that's the reason why you don't have to have the answers all at the beginning. You just really need to start. And then once you actually identify those different types of things, you want to be able to assign ownership of this asset to one of those key stakeholders, because then they can be able to monitor, they can be able to evolve the inventory lists. And then next, you want to be able to categorize based on how critical it is to be able to prioritize the security measures effectively. So categorizing what your actual information assets are and what your inventory is will ultimately allow you to be able to know like what is the risk involved in those specific assets, right? So once you figure out your inventory lists and the managed assets, then we want to be able to have a risk assessment and disaster recovery. Now, when I talk about disasters, I'm not talking about like a natural disaster of like a hurricane or a tornado or anything like that. We're actually talking about a disaster of like a cyber attack, a hacking, a releasing of information that was unauthorized or may have not been fully malicious, but it was still leaked information in terms of like your financial or like PII or like health information, you know? So what we want to do first and foremost is we want to identify and prioritize threats and vulnerabilities. Once we do that, then we can be able to develop strategies to be able to mitigate, transfer, accept, or even avoid the risks based on their impact and feasibility. So really having risk assessment and also having a plan of action in terms of disaster recovery will ultimately lead into this next portion, which is incident management and the disaster recovery. So once you assess what is the risk involved, you want to be able to have what is the management of that incident. So you as a company will need to develop and test like incidents response. So if something happens, like a cyber attack happens, what is our process and procedure in order to be able to mitigate that? And also be able to recover the data if needed, or be able to have safeguards to be able to protect us from that. So ensuring that you have a recovery plan, it'll ensure that you have swift recovery and minimize any business disruption in the event of a security incident. So having that, testing it, developing it, evolving it, that's going to be the biggest thing. So having it just spelled out at the beginning, it could be as basic as possible of like, hey, if we get a cyber attack, we're going to be resetting passwords. We're going to be making sure that we reset the 2FA as well too, or removing any of the devices that are connected to that compromised email, you know, or let's just say that we're abiding to like CCPA where information got leaked of our customers, then actually having a letter being sent out to the customers, being transparent that we did get a data leak and here is where it actually got leaked to. So then you stay compliant and that you have an actual management for that, right? Now, we talked about all of these different things, and it could be very, very daunting to be able to have to think about this on your own. So there's always options of this next point in terms of your implementing your information security program, which is utilizing a third-party risk management, right? So there are vendors out there that actually can be able to help you out with this in terms of like your risk management and how to be able to implement your InfoSec program. So what they'll be able to do for you is assess, monitor any kind of security risk posed, and they'll be able to actually help you out with assessing all of these different things and how to be able to protect your sensitive data. So what you can be able to do with this third-party risk management is be able to implement contractual obligations and monitoring mechanisms to be able to enforce security standards. So then they can be able to be there as the person that kind of helps monitor, make sure that your standards are in place, and then how we can be able to further that and be able to evolve it, right? So you don't have to do this alone. You can always be able to reach out to a vendor. You can always be able to reach out to us, Interlaced, to be able to help you out with it as well too, in terms of answering these questions as well. So another thing that we would want to be able to do when we're implementing an InfoSec program is actually implementing security tools and security controls, right? So when we talk about implementing security controls, We could deploy technical controls and also operational controls. So let's talk about the technical first. So a few things that you can be able to have is encryption on your actual devices. That's going to be the first and foremost thing, because if a device gets stolen, then the person who stole it can't be able to get into the device because the disk is encrypted, right? So you can also be able to do encryption on your email as well too. So sending out encrypted emails. So if there's anything financial related, or HIPAA related, or even SOC 2 compliance, or even CCPA related, then you can be able to encrypt your emails. So then that data is not floating in the internet to be able to be stolen. So that's what we can be able to do with encryption. Next would be like firewalls, where you can be able to protect your network, have fail safes there, essentially kind of have a guard on your network so then there isn't any unauthorized access to your information that's stored locally or could be stored on your network in itself, right? Now, another thing we could be able to do is put like a email security, which we use like iron skills, where essentially it'll detect it, where if a user gets an email and it's actually from a sender that they don't know about, or it could be like a spoofed email as well too, it'll show these red banners to be able to let them know, hey, you might need to take a look at this email a little bit more, because it could make you vulnerable as a company. So lastly, in terms of the technical controls, you can actually do phishing campaigns. So then this will actually allow you to be able to know where is our risk inside of our people. It's not to be able to reprimand them for clicking on an email, but for us to be able to have data on what we need to do to be able to implement certain trainings, or certain other guards as well too, or even tighten our email security from the phishing campaign. So you can always be able to run this. Sometimes some companies actually run this monthly. Some people actually run this quarterly. Some people run this maybe like every half a year or yearly, you know? So something to think about in terms of the technical controls that you can be able to implement in your InfoSec program. Now, let's go ahead and move gears to the operational controls. So this is where it'll be more of an operational standard for your company, where you can be able to create policies for information security, and also do employee training. So let's just say that you have an employee starting and they can be able to go through all of these security trainings when they first start. So then they're our first line of defense at the very beginning. So thinking about the policies that you want to be able to create, like DLP policies or data loss prevention policies, where we're putting safeguards inside of our environment to be able to make sure that our information is safe. Like those are the types of things that we need to think about when we're actually implementing security controls. So with the combination of both of these controls, this will mitigate identified risks and ensure consistent enforcement. So that's important, is consistent enforcement. And keep the word consistent in your mind, because that's going to be what is needed to be able to make sure that it's not as close to foolproof as possible, right? So once we implement these security controls, we can talk about also like security awareness training. So it's not just training in terms of how to be able to teach your employee to do their job, but making them aware of it, right? Because people within your organization, they're going to be the first line of defense and can be the best line of defense, because if we're able to be proactive and instead of reactive, that ultimately is going to be the best thing for your business. So we want to educate employees on InfoSec policies, best practices, and their role specifically in maintaining security. So it could be different for every single role, but the why of what we want to protect is all going to be the same. And that's the reason why you can utilize like security awareness training. So we want to conduct these trainings regularly, and there's third-party tools that can be able to help you out with that, like KnowBe4, Breach Secure Now, Iron Skills training, and those are just a few of the things that we actually use in our throughout all of our different clients and companies that we actually support. And there's great trainings on there, and they can be tailored to specific people or tailored to your specific organization category as well too. So feel free to look into those types of things. Know before, breach secure, and iron skills as well. And then what we can be able to do is maintain records to ensure ongoing compliance. So we want to be able to know who has done the training, who still needs to do the training. Has it been regular as well too? So that's where you can be able to utilize security awareness trainings to be able to create the best line of defense, which is our people. Now, the last but not least thing that we need to be able to think about when we're thinking about how to implement an InfoSec program is continuous auditing and monitoring, right? And the key word there is continuous, because we want to regularly audit and monitor the effectiveness of your InfoSec program through internal assessments and also third-party audits. So that's the reason why we want to utilize our third-party vendors, because you don't know what you don't know, and someone can be able to see that, especially a vendor that just deals with risk assessment, right? And so that's why what we want to do from there is use the findings to be able to refine your security practice and demonstrate compliance with regulatorily standards, right? So that's the reason why let's keep auditing, keep evolving your InfoSec program, because it's going to change. Your business is going to change. Cyber attacks change as well too. So let's just make a note to be able to make sure that we're going to continuously audit as well as monitor all of your information and also your InfoSec program. So like I said before, the best way to implement is to just start. So first start with the why, then the what we want to be able to protect, and what is the risk involved into it, which will then allow you to be able to know how. Now, the how is going to be different for every single business and organization. So let's just make sure that we're starting with all of those different types of things. But the very number one thing that remains throughout all of this is the why. So starting with the why is going to be the biggest thing. So in conclusion, establishing an information security program, it can really feel daunting, guys. So let's just get started on it. And it also causes, like many startups, to hesitate or overlook this crucial step. So just remember, it's a journey that often starts with uncertainty and complexity. So making the initial steps is the most challenging, and that's the reason why we can be able to help you out. You can be able to have your whole team kind of help you out, and it's a team effort in order to be able to get this up and running. So businesses today, they confront escalating cyber threats. So it emphasizes the critical need for a robust information security program. So just remember, like a statistic that I actually even heard is the average amount lost for a security breach or cyber attack is around $3 million, which is a huge amount for anyone. So we want to ensure everyone is protected and has this on the forefront of their minds when wanting to protect their organization and business. So with the steps that we and the information we provided in today's webinar, we feel confident that this will give you a good start to implementing this in any business. So remember, the most important part of this is to protect your business and everything that you worked so hard to build. So who's ready to safeguard your company?
Awesome. Thank you so much, JR. That was great. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and I'm going to pull up to see some questions that we've got. So give me 1 second here. Okay. So a couple questions. So you talked about and gave some like really great examples about, when it comes to prioritizing assets. Obviously people really want to make sure that they're safeguarding things like finances. That's something that I think is extremely important. But what are maybe some examples that may not be as high of a priority, but should still be like in the consideration process?
Yeah, so I would even think like for instance, like possibly like website types of things, so like having like information on your website, like sometimes that may not be like the most important thing, but is something to be able to think about. Or even for instance, just like normal policies would actually be still a big thing for us to be able to actually have. So I would even say like anything that is not detrimental to your business. So an example would be like maybe a spreadsheet that is just like notes from like a meeting, you know. Sometimes maybe that might not be the biggest thing, but could actually be detrimental to your business because it could be notes depending on the meeting, you know. Um or like of course like finances would be like the biggest thing, but like maybe your employees' information, like their title, you know, that is something to still think about because cyber attacks actually directly attack like those specific peoples that are key stakeholders. But protecting your financial information and protecting like your trade secrets would outweigh even like being able to protect like what is so and so's department title, you know. But that is still something that you want to be able to think about because there could still be a risk involved in that, right? So,
Right.
could also be like, for instance, if you have good safeguards on like a server that's there, like a sandbox or something that is like a virtual machine that only someone actually utilizes on a non-daily basis that doesn't really have any information. You still want to be able to think about those things, but could be lower on your priority list because there's not really information there, but could still actually lead into an avenue of you being able to get a breach, you know. So those types of things is to think about, but like really knowing what is the information that interacts with a lot of different systems, you would want to prioritize those types of things first and then be able to get to the rest of it, you know. So
Right. Well, I think that was a good point that you made, is it's not just about knowing like what the assets are, but how they interact. And those interactions can sometimes be just as or more important than like the asset itself. So I think that's just like a good thing to double down on. Um, you talked about some technical controls that people can implement. And so just do you have any favorite technical controls for companies that may be using more Apple products, and then maybe technical controls for people that might be using, have more like PC based, like top three? You don't have to, I know there are thousands of them out there, but like, do you have like kind of things that you prefer, or that you always feel like are really, really good, controls from a technical perspective?
definitely. So I think when we think about like Apple and Windows devices, the good thing about it is the way I like to think of it is they're all kind of like cars or devices. They all do the same thing, right? It's just the buttons are all in different areas. So when we think about those types of things, you want to think about getting an antivirus on there. So then at least any computer is protected with that, with malware, making sure there's no adware, there's no threats on the actual device, right? And then making sure that you're encrypting both of those devices. Because the good thing about any of these devices is they have encryption built into it, whether it be File Vault or BitLocker, or even making sure that the antivirus is making sure those security things are involved in it. But then also having kind of like an MDM or a mobile device management for it. So then that'll actually help you monitor those devices. And there's a lot of tools out there, like for instance, Adigy, Ninja RMM, also Intune as well too for Windows devices that'll allow you to be able to monitor, have safeguards within that to be able to alert you when there is something that's out of compliant, or even be able to force the encryption of your device upon setup, upon it needing to get reformatted, and then all of a sudden it needs to actually get it re-encrypted. Then those are a lot of safeguard tools that you can be able to utilize in any type of business for those devices. So I mentioned antivirus, getting your encryption taken care of, turning on firewall would also be another one on any of the devices, as well as like making sure that you have an MDM or mobile device management system to be able to protect it or to assess and monitor. That's what I meant.
Gotcha. This next, it's not really more of a question, but I'm just going to put a little bit of a shameless plug out there. Um, there is like you mentioned, training and ongoing training for employees, which I think is a big thing people underestimate. But I think I saw a stat recently that said most causes of breach now, or one of the main causes of breaches, have to go, or at least come through some kind of like an employee action, right? Like it could
Mhm.
be somebody clicking on a phishing link or something to that effect. So a free tool that I know that we have used, and that we've encouraged, clients to use just just as a test for employees is Google has a free phishing tool. So if you literally just Google Google's phishing quiz, it'll come up, and that's something I know is really easy and is a free tool just to get people thinking. And then I know our blog has several resources on ways to safeguard your employees. For example, we've got one that we've written like how to read a URL, right? Because that's something else that we all get a lot of emails. It's really easy to just click on a link. If you can like even hover over the link with your mouse and try to see like where that URL may be going, learning how to read those URLs, I think could be extremely important. This is a last question. So where can people find you? Where can they connect with you?
Oh yeah. So of course I work here at Interlaced. So if you do utilize this as an MSP, you can always be able to reach out to me. I also do have my LinkedIn as well too, which will also be at the end of this slide. So feel free to message me through there. And I'm happy to be able to help you out with anything, or as well as like answer any questions that you guys have. So that would be the best motive method in terms of getting in contact with me, but I'm happy to be able to help out you all with anything that you guys may need.
Apologies. I got a little trigger happy today with the slides. And so here is Erlan's LinkedIn. So please feel free to reach out. As I mentioned earlier, we will be sending this out after the fact. This will be included in there. But Erlan, thank you so much for all this information. It was truly great. Thank you all to everyone that joined today. We are so glad to have you. And please be sure to come back and register for our webinar on December the 4th, where we will be talking about scaling through automation. So thank you all, and we hope you have a great day. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.